What's going on YouTube? I just made a personal website to show off some of my skills, and I'm going to give you a little bit of a demo as well as a little tutorial at the end on this cool library P5. So as you can see, I'm trying to make this a pretty interactive and interesting website. Let's go. The starting section is actually going to be the About Me section, which is this right here. You can drag the mouse over this image here and it will pixelate it by doing some math and turning it into different resolution ellipses. And I've got a little bit of a about me kind of information section here. Got some links that will take you to some of my artwork and stuff like that, just personal interests, because I do want this to really showcase my personality, and I think that's important in a personal website. And yeah, so like here for example, I just clicked on a link to my photography, took you to a little custom made bucket basically in Google Photos. And if we go to the Ruby on Rails, it's got some information there. In JavaScript, again, I've got some interesting stuff to say about my skills in JavaScript. I mention a website that I made, and I've got another widget down there. In React, I made this cool little sliding drawer here, and in there you can horizontally scroll through some videos that I've made of my React projects. I might do the same thing for some of the other sections as well. In the HTML section, I got some more stuff. I wanted to keep this consistent theme here with this scrollable information. And up there, I've got a little kind of hover widget on the text. The CSS one, I was actually pretty proud of this. I made these little filters that make the text and the rest of the website behind it look different. So, I just wanted to make something that kind of showed off some interesting design skills that I have. And since I definitely lean towards front end, I wanted to show off some CSS for sure. I've also got, some other technologies that I didn't really want to write a whole section about there. And in the social links, I've got some floating links here. They do a nice little wobble. And those will actually take you to those websites, so my GitHub, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Instagram. And now I'll do a little bit of a walkthrough in some of the code that I've worked on. So like I said, I was going to tell you a little bit about this new library that I started using. It's called P5. It's originally designed for Python, but it's essentially used to do all kinds of stuff with math. So you can see here I've got a little shapes setup function going along. And what it gives you is this sketch component in React. So you got the shapes set up. We're going to do a draw. So for this particular one, I also did a window resize. I pretty much do that for all of them because otherwise it won't size with the rest of your stuff. But yeah, the shapes draw, just so you can see here, this is for that first thing in the welcome section. Those kind of moving around shapes, you'll see them again at the very end of the video. But the ball and the squares. So you got the background, the target where the mouse is basically. And this is probably the most simple one. So this one right here, that's the color 25500, that's red. So that's that, red circle in the center. We're going to fill it with that color. No stroke means there's no outline. So it's just a shape, no outline around it. And then I use the window width and window height to determine what the size would be so that it would resize as well. And then this right here is basically the same deal. This time I used a stroke. This is for the squares that travel on the y-axis in that welcome section. So then this entire section here, this is all just for the squares on the left. And then this is all the squares on the right. And they actually did need to be positioned pretty specifically in order for them to stay kind of centered, but not directly in the center of the page. Yeah, and then right down here is that sketch component that we're going to call. This is actually with P5 React. You can also just use P5 in JavaScript. And then I've got this section display down here. If you watched my hooks video, you will see that I used a really similar pattern in this in my personal website here to what I demoed in that video. So basically I've got this hash lookup table with all these different sections that you can display. They're different components, and down here I basically just use that use state, and I've got some conditional logic so that when I click on something on the left, it'll change the state, and that's what we end up rendering based on the name that we plug into that hash. And I do also want to show you a little bit about the CSS section. So yeah, basically all those little kind of drop-down filters were structured like this, where I have some inner divs, and they basically just have the filter go along with these use states. And when you click on it, it either sets it to on, depending on if the filter is already off. Otherwise, if it's not off, set it to off, and that determines whether we actually have the filter visible or not. And all that's in the CSS, but I don't want to get too deep into that right now. I just mainly wanted to show you a little bit about the P5. So like I said, we will have a quick chance to look at those shapes again. That's them. That's what that P5 that I showed you did. And anyway, guys, this was a lot of fun to work on. I'm really glad that this personal website is looking the way that it is, although I could still polish up a little bit. Thanks for taking a look with me, and I will probably go over some hook stuff in the next week. Maybe tell you a little bit more about P5. Anyway, as always, happy programming.